This time won't you save me? This time won't you save me? Baby, I can feel myself giving up. This time won't you save me? This time won't you save me? Baby, I can feel myself giving up. Giving up. Right. Hi, Supremes. Welcome. Was that too loud? That might have been too loud. Today's channeling album of choice is Pink Friday, the original, of course. I feel like that's the perfect song for me to, or album for me to drown out the world while I try to get across this message. So today we will be deconstructing the war on the divine feminine. Okay? So here's the core idea, right? The old paradigm, the empire, right? Let's just call it the empire, the matrix, the patriarchal cage that we live on is in a constant state of terror of the rising frequency of true sovereignty, which is why they are waging a multi-front war to cage, commodify, and distort the divine feminine energy by forcing it into three paradigms, right? Or three false boxes or looking glasses of feminine energy, right? The hypersexual courtesan, the ascetic nun, or the mother figure, right? Thereby preventing humanity, both men and women, from accessing the integrated creative power that is our collective birthright. So, what do I mean by this? We live in a world where if you do not have a perceived image, or if you don't have a certain perspective on what it means to be feminine, then you yourself are not feminine. And I think we're seeing the rise of this more and more and more, right? I think we see this in a plethora of ways. The pure girl, right? White women have white women femininity where they're fragile, they're weak, they're small framed, they don't speak back, they don't speak up. And that's true femininity. And that right there is always an attack on black women, right? Black women are too strong, we're too outspoken, we're too go-getting, right? They don't want women to embody that multi-dimensionalness of femininity. They only want us to access a perspective of femininity that essentially benefits men and allows them to remain in the dominant position. The other perspective is the sex worker, right? The sex worker who is quote unquote empowered by selling herself to the empire, which I don't even know how anyone could fall into that trap. If you have to sell any aspect of yourself, it's nothing to survive. It's not empowering. There's nothing empowering about transactional relationships. That is not divine feminine in any type of way, right? So we have these like four archetypes, right? So there's the sovereign feminine, right? Which is what we all should be working towards. The sovereign feminine. That's the integrated, multifaceted life force of creation, intuition, and connection. It is a frequency, not a gender. I kind of made like a small video about this yesterday, talking about why certain people's songs are failing, trying to embody imaging and messagings that they are not truly. And that someone asked me, oh, well, where does that leave trans people? See, that's part of the issue, right? Because femininity masculinity is not a gender. It's an energy. So you don't have to be a certain gender to embody feminine energy. And I think, like, and I mean this in the most neutral way possible, a lot of the propaganda that is surrounding gender is a part of the warping of the feminine energy, the divine feminine, because you don't have to be a specific gender to embody femininity. You don't have to change your gender. You don't have to look a certain way, dress away. It's not about hair. It's not about makeup. It's not about wigs. It's not about dating men. Femininity is an energy of nurturing, an energy of caring, a soft power. It is so much more than what body parts you have, how you dress, how you look, and how you appear to the opposite sex. That is not femininity. That is gender. So, yeah, it's not about gender. The sovereign femininity is not about gender. Okay, so then you have the Cartesian archetype, right? The BBL warrior. Okay. Anyways, let me just, let's go. And let's just get into it, right? So, the two cages, right? Because motherhood isn't really the cage. It's more so a cage inside of the cage. The two cages, right? The cage of excess, which is the Cartesian. The push for BBLs, fillers, hypersexualization isn't about freedom. It's about tying a woman's value and power directly to her desirability as a product in the empire. It's the gentrification of her body, turning it into a prime real estate for the empire. This is the one that is always most concerning to me, because this is the one that is being pushed on to Black women, right? They want us to feel like in order to be desirable, to be worth something, that we have to constantly be selling something. And sometimes it's not always just our bodies. Sometimes it's our energy, like, you know what I mean? Like, even the boss feminine, to me, is a perversion on feminine energy, because this idea that you constantly have to hustle to be worthy is also a part of this paradigm, this attack on feminine energy. But definitely the BBL warrior, or the OnlyFans influencer, or the stripper, and I think we see that one so much and so often, to a point where a lot of people are not able to appreciate what they already have as being worthy or being enough, right? And this is definitely an attack on femininity. There's nothing empowering about selling yourself to the empire. The empire does not care about you. The empire does not see women as anything but commodities. So when you sell yourself to the empire, you are doing exactly what it is that the empire desires. If you tie your worth to being desirable to men, then that is not sovereign feminine energy, right? The feminine does not define herself by outside forces. The feminine energy is defined by itself. You're defined by how you define yourself, however that may be, right? And this ideology that you either need to be one or the other is crazy. The feminine is it's a multidimensional aspect, right? You're going to embody many things. And that doesn't mean that there isn't power in being desirable as a feminine. That's not what I'm saying. There is a lot of power in that. But when you only embody one aspect of that, that is not divine femininity. So that's what I'm saying when I say that in itself that's a cage, right? And so the other cage, like I talked about earlier, the purity cage, right? You're this ideology that you have to be self-sacrificing, a caretaker. It's the other side of the coin, right? It demands that you erase your own desires and sexuality and multidimensional self to serve a non-threatening, non-sexual resource for others, right? To be that for others. You don't need to be that for others. And I think this is why, I think this is a really important point, because this is how they pit white women and Black women against each other. Because naturally, without the cage of the empire, Black women and white women would be natural co-contributors. And I think that's why white women gravitate towards Black women so much, because they have been conditioned the opposite of us, right? Black women are being conditioned towards this hyper sexual concept of desirability, right? They want black women to look the part, be extra sexually, extra voluptuous, you know, whatever Taylor Swift said, right? I'm not a bad bitch and I'm not a savage, but I'm gonna hold you down. Whatever the fuck she said, right? That's the opposite, right? Because white women have been conditioned to be these caretakers, these nurturers, these lovers. Not to say that black women aren't, but I'm saying their whole identity is wrapped in that, right? If white women aren't wives and caretakers, then what are they? White women from a young age are dating to get married. Like, all of my white friends have been in long-term serious relationships since we were like 16. Not saying they've been in one, but they have consistently been in back-to-back relationships until they got married, because that's how they have been conditioned to know that their duty is as a wife and as a partner. So I think naturally white women gravitate towards black women because we represent that yin yang dynamic that it's really supposed to be. So of course they like artists like, you know, of course they like the hypersexual image that is being portrayed by black women in the media space, like Sexy Red, Lotto, Ice Spice. Of course they like that. Of course they gravitate to it because that is not how they are conditioned to be. And the same for us. You can see the soft life dynamic really popping up in black culture, which I was surprised by, right? I wasn't expecting soft life to really fall into the black sphere of it all. You know what I mean? And we're seeing like black women dim themselves. I seen a girl make a video the other day and she said that the black hair scene has really taken a shift. Everyone's wearing the exact same hairstyle, right? People used to have like all these colorful hairstyles and cuts, and like hair culture in the black space used to be crazy, but now everybody wants this jet black look, and that's because they want the benefits that come along with being in the cage of purity culture for the empire, right? It does come with benefits. When you don't bend to the will of the patriarchy, then you are not under its protection, right? And that is so anti the natural order of things, right? The masculine energy is supposed to naturally protect the feminine energy because the masculine acknowledges the feminine energy. In this context, right, in the way that the empire exists, in the way that the patriarchal paradigm exists, the masculine energy doesn't protect the feminine energy. It cages it, it controls it, it manipulates it. It's supposed to be a yin and yang energy. They're supposed to be balanced. There's no balance in the patriarchy that we live in. We've been conditioned to see feminine energy as less worthy than masculine energy, or something that masculine energy is supposed to control. That's not the natural order of things, right? They're yin and yang. Like I said, if you watch my last video, like I said, this is the suppression of the Sophia frequency, right? Sophia is the natural counterpart to the Christ energy, right? And I'm not religious, so I don't like thinking of things as like actual people, but more so representations of energy and frequency, because that's really what it is in my opinion, right? I don't believe anything's literally, but in that sense, that makes sense to me. So the patriarchy offers you, or the matrix offers you, an illusion of choice, right? You get two prisons. You either get to be the courtesan, the sex worker, or you get to be the mother. And I think this is not like a new concept, right? This isn't something that they're just doing. This is the historical reality that has been for women for centuries now. Kings from wealthy families would marry women from other wealthy families, and they would live in this cage in their pretty dresses and their huge castles, but they didn't have any actual freedoms. They couldn't do anything. And the women who had freedom didn't really have freedom. They just had more opportunity to leave the pretty castle, the dollhouse, than the other women, right? They got to be free with their money, but they had to sell a divine aspect of themselves in order to accomplish that. They had to give away their feminine energy for money. So that transaction itself dilutes and corrupts the feminine frequency. They're both bad. So you either have to suppress the feminine energy, be inside the beautiful bird cage, or you have to sell the feminine energy to the patriarchy. Neither choice is really a choice. Neither choice represents the sovereign feminine. So I particularly feel like they have not only corrupted sex, but they've corrupted motherhood and the feminine body, right? Let's talk about the difference between sacred sex and transactional labor, because I feel like everyone's under the impression that everyone's selling it. Everyone's selling it. I hate when I talk about prostitute culture, courtesan culture, whatever you want to call it, and the response anytime I point out what's going on in the media with the girls, the response is always, well, we're all selling it, right? You're either selling it by being a wife and trading it for nurturing, or you're selling it, for actual money as a prostitute. I don't agree, right? Sex work is not, I don't want to frame sex work as a moral failing, but as a spiritual distortion, right? Because it's not really about morality. It's about the fact that in the divine sense, sex is sacred, right? Your solar plexus, right? Sacral energy, sacred, sacral. Those are the same words. So when you feel desired, right? When you feel desire, when you feel lust or whatever, where do you feel it? Right underneath your belly button. That is your sacral chakra, right? Your sacred energy, your space, right? Your root chakra and your sacral chakra are both activated during sexual encounters. So your sacral chakra is your chakra for creation, right? For creation. When you force yourself, and I guess force is that's a word choice. You dilute and distort that energy that is for pure co-creation with another being or for yourself, right? Because you don't have to use that energy for anything. You can use that energy for yourself to build something, to create. But when you use it for that, it's being stolen. You're literally transactioning your creative energy for the empire. Why do you think they have commodified the female body? Because the feminine body is the portal of creation. They need your energy to create anything. Everything that is here is created because of the feminine energy. Women represent the material world. We are the entirety of the material world. Earth is material, right? Right? The earth, water, material. Fire and air are masculine energies. Does that make sense? So everything that is about creation is a feminine energy. You need water and earth to create food, resources, anything. Everything about our material world is feminine, which is why we're always talking about Christ consciousness, because that's masculine. So this ideology of spirit, spirit in that sense, because I feel like that's, it can be looked at in different ways. But the way that we acknowledge it in religion is like spirit is the masculine energy, the divine father, right? Because we live in the material world. But as you can see, the patriarchy, the empire, whatever you want to call it, Babylon, they have commodified the entirety of the material world. So when you have to go to work, when we go to work, when we look outside, we see all these buildings, these jobs, these things, everything is the masculine energy dominating the feminine, the divine. It's corrupted it in every single way. So when you trade the last thing that is yours, which is your sexual energy, your body, for resources, you have commodified the very last thing that you control. We're getting to a point where there is not an aspect of the divine feminine that has not been commodified or used for transaction, right? Now they've gotten rid of abortions. They're trying to tell women what they can do to their body. Like, it's becoming so perverted. They've taken over in every single way, right? Using sex as a tool for transaction is the lowest vibrational use of creative energy. It just is. It's like it's not arguable. And this is why I hate when y'all try to say that everyone's selling it, because everyone is not selling it. I've never had sex for transactional anything. Sex is supposed to be used for connection, creativity. You are imbuing your energy with another human being. To have sex simply to obtain something material, for one, that doesn't make sense. You are a representation of the material. Why waste your energy to create something that you're 1,000 times more worthy than? You are the physical representation of the material world. So for you to commodify yourself to obtain something else that is essentially a false aspect of the material is crazy. You're greater than any bag, any lunch, any dinner. It doesn't make sense to commodify yourself for things that represent you, are small representations of your entirety. So yes, sacred sex and transactional labor is definitely an issue and is a further corruption of the divine feminine energy. The other thing is the Venus body versus the manufactured form. And I mean this in every sense of the aspect, not just BBL culture, but also gym culture, right? This ideology that you have to be either super freaking fit or super curvy is a contrast of how we have celebrated the soft, abundant Venus body, right? Which has always been a symbol of life, fertility, and comfort, right? Women with soft curves, a little weight on the stomach, you know, the voluptuousness of the soft feminine body has been corrupted into harder frameworks, right? Either over-exaggerated sexual forms like ass and boobs, or hardened abs, like everything compact and tight, right? This moves from a body that is experiencing life to a body that is experienced as an object. Because what is the purpose outside of aesthetics for you to have abs? What purpose does that serve? I understand having core strength, right? Core strength, mobility, right? Just general health. But what does that have to do with you achieving aesthetic goals? Why do you need to achieve aesthetic goals? Because the patriarchy has made you feel like your sense of worth is in achieving that. If you don't have the look, then as a woman, you're not worthy. That is the corruption of the divine feminine energy, of the body, of the feminine body. I don't think y'all understand, like, when I say that women represent the material world and why they are so hell-bent on controlling the vessel of the feminine, that is so important. Because like I said, we are the material world. So taking hold of the vessel and how the vessel is interpreted is the ultimate distortion of the Sophia frequency, the divine feminine, the sovereign feminine. Can't keep these hoes up off me. Damn, no. Last chance. This is last chance. This is my last chance. I'm ready to shoot. I'm ready to shoot. I'm ready to shoot. I'm ready to shoot. I'm ready to show. I'm ready to show. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. So the same thing is done in motherhood, right? This ideology that once a woman becomes a mother, her primary and only goal is to take care, nurture, and watch her children grow is a perversion of the divine feminine energy, right? The sovereign mother nurtures from her overflow. She is not erased by the role of motherhood. Becoming a mother is not supposed to become your identity. That is also a transactional aspect of them corrupting the feminine energy, right? They are commodifying women so that their only use is to provide bodies for the empire to use, right? Because they're just going to use those bodies. They're not going to do anything positive with the bodies. So once again, like, this is just more corruption. The Matrix version of motherhood demands total self-erasure, corrupting the sacred bond into an identity-destroying obligation. This is why it works so hard at shaming women who have children who live lives. Oh, you're not supposed to have a man. You're not supposed to go out anymore. You're not supposed to party. You're not supposed to do anything but take care of your children. They want you to feel that way because they want you to feel obligated to the empire, right? That is an obligation of the empire to take care of others. Please stop that. Please stop that. And the bigger issue is that this isn't just a woman's only issue, right? The suppression of the divine feminine creates a sickness throughout society. And this is why we have reached the point in which we have reached. A man without feminine energy is a beast. A man without feminine energy is a beast. Because we are not animals, right? And we always notice that when men are trying to justify their behaviors in society, it's always like, well, a lion does this. You know what I'm saying? A lion is the leader, and I don't understand why we even go down those roads. We are intelligent, divine creatures. Humanity is not. We are a form of man, but we are not the same as animals. And I think the more that we lead down that road, the more we will degrade the human being, right? Ellie, get out the window. Men is not to be hard. Man is not supposed to be beast. Man is not supposed to be one-dimensional. He's not just supposed to be dominant and strong and all overpowering of the feminine energy. That is not the natural way of things. And that's why man is so lonely, right? The male loneliness epidemics is the absence of the divine feminine energy. Men are taught to suppress every aspect of divine femininity: emotions, vulnerability, nurturing, right? This cuts them off from their own hearts and from genuine connection with others, creating a world of isolated, hardened individuals. And that's why they're so unhappy, right? They can't even identify. They are so disconnected from the divine feminine energy that they can't even identify the cause of their own pain and suffering. If men were properly in tune with themselves, right? Because men aren't even in tune with their bodies. Because in order to be in tune with your body, you'd have to be in tune with the divine feminine. Are we making sense? Am I making sense? This is why sex is the only thing that they understand, because sex is like the one primal energy of the body that you don't really need to understand, right? But this is why everything can become so corrupted so easily. This is why we have all these DL men. This is how we have all these DL men, sexually confused men, sexually repressed and freaked out men, because sex from a feminine aspect, right, is more so about connection and nurturing. they are out of touch with what those urges actually mean. And this is like I said, this is why we have a lot of DL men, because a man who has a connection with another man will confuse that connection for sexual attraction, right? When he starts feeling these deep emotions, which if he was in touch with his divine femininity, he would know is love for another being. Intimacy isn't always sexual, but because men are not in tune with their emotions and their physical form, they don't know that, right? The increase in gay, not necessarily gay, but DL, closeted men, isn't necessarily because we just have more DL and gay men. It's because men are not in tune. It is what it is. Men are troubled creatures because of their disconnection from the divine feminine. They can't be in happy relationships. They can't have bonded friendships in the same way that women do, because they are not connected to that source of the understanding, which is, Ellie, I'm not going to tell you again, which is the divine feminine energy. But yeah, life is a duality. A world that suppresses feminine energy in both men and women is a world that is operating with half its power source. And that's why the world sucks right now, right? You can see places like the Middle East where the divine feminine is completely suppressed, where things are terrible, right? The less divine feminine energy there is, the more chaos it will, because there's no balance. The world needs balance. It's all yang, no yin, all logic, no intuition, all force, no flow. This is why the culture feels so brittle, so hostile, so unsustainable. The antidote or the solution is to encode the divine feminine back into society, right? True divine femininity isn't altruistic or self-deprecating. It operates from a deeper code. The code values connection over transaction, wholeness over fragmented idea, and sovereignty over desirability. Her power is in her fluidity. She can be soft, or she can be fierce. She can be sensual, or she can be modest. A mother and a creator. Because these are all authentic expressions of a whole being, not roles to be performed for the system. The goal is not to choose a cage, but to dissolve the illusion of the cages themselves. So yeah, the conclusion is, the war on the divine feminine is the central spiritual battle of our time. The world that we live in right now is at constant war with the feminine energy, and that is why things seem to be becoming worse. Every time you reject the false choice between the BBL or the nun, or every time a man embraces his vulnerability, you are striking a blow for the sovereign infrastructure. You are giving 1 point to the new paradigm. We're not here to be managed. We are here to remember our wholeness, and in doing so, we re-sanctify the world. All right. And that concludes today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about this war on the divine feminine. And until next time, I might be wearing the same outfit. Don't judge me. Okay, bye.